Okay,
Well, we're not committed.
so I gotta have time to hand out some review materials. So let's get started. Let's go back to our notes. And again, we are picking and choosing, because we're not gonna go through this whole packet. So let's go back to our notes and let's finish up our conversation about the ellipse. So I am on the back of page 57, looking at letter G. Keep in mind, what I am doing here is writing the equation of an ellipse.
Oh, yeah.
So
He said, no, do we review?
you need to know that that's the kind of equation you're coming up with.
You say focus on that.
Okay. Come on, yellow, let's go. So we have information about our ellipse, and we are gonna write the equation, okay? So we did this yesterday, we're doing it again, just to get kind of warmed up. What do I know? -2, -3, and -2, -7 are the endpoints of the major axis. So this thing has this kind of a shape. Remember, nobody's graphing or grading your graph. So would you agree that's the kind of shape I have? If that's the major axis, that means it's that way, not this way. Okay? Now, I have no idea about my minor axis, except I know that it's 4 units long, which means I'm gonna go 2 this way and 2 this way. Does that make sense to everybody? Again, nobody's grading your picture. I need to get information to plug in up here. So what do you think? Do I know my center? Can I find my center? I think I can. Isn't my center right in the middle of that segment? So -3 and -7 make -10, and half of that is -5. So this point right here is -2, -5. Now what does that tell me about my equation? If that's the center, then I have x plus 2, y plus 5. Now I need my denominators. Well, we already decided, because the minor axis was 4, we were gonna go back and forth 2. If we're going back and forth 2, what does that tell me? There's a 4 under the x, because the square root of that number tells me how far to go sideways, right? What about under here? Well, let's look back at our picture. How far up and down, how far up and down am I going? I did not do a good job with this problem. I'm going up and down 2, so this is also a 4. So that's not really an ellipse, that is a circle. Yeah, my fault, bad problem. But that would be the equation. That would be the equation, but it's not an ellipse, it's a circle. All right, let's try one more, like it's going to be on your quiz. Let's look at letter J. We're gonna have like a test, except I'm gonna have to cut stuff out of it, so it's more like a big quiz. All right, so we have major endpoints at 3, -7. And 3, 3. Those are major endpoints. So I don't know exactly what it looks like, but something like this. Would you agree with that? If those are the major endpoints? Again, my equation is this. need to start filling in the blanks. So here's your major axis, right here. Somewhere in there's your center, right? Where's your center? Halfway between 3 and -7. So 3 plus -7 is -4, divided by 2 is -2. So 3 -2, does that make sense to everybody? What does that tell you about your equation then? X minus 3, y plus 2? How far up and down did we go? 5? So if we went up and down 5, this number right here needs to be a 25? Because the square root of that number tells me how far up and down to go. The minor axis is 6. What does that mean? We're going sideways 3. And if I'm going sideways 3, the x denominator must be a 9. Okay? So your 8-2 homework is going to be due on Tuesday. Okay, that's your ellipse homework. Now we're going to talk about the last curve, the one we're going to have to shortcut a little bit, and that is the hyperbola. So here's your definition, so you have this. A set of points in a plane of whose distances from 2 fixed points is constant. All right, so you go ahead and get that written down. And then let's talk about it. Does any of that sound familiar to you? Isn't it the same as the ellipse definition? Except what? Do you remember what's different? In the ellipse definition, it says the sum. That's a sum. Now it's a difference. Look at this equation. Does this look like yesterday's equations? Yesterday's equations look like that, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Now they have a minus in there. They're a difference. The good news is, almost everything you already know is the same. There's a little bit of a difference, but most of it's exactly the same. These 2 fixed points are called foci. But we're not going to find them. We're going to leave that out. All right, what's it look like? Well, let's see. If I said to you, where's the center of that? What would you say? Origin. Why is the center at the origin? Nothing up top. Nothing added and subtracted. So it's just like everything else. If there's nothing added or subtracted to that x, you are at 0. If you were going to graph this yesterday, what would that 16 tell you? Go 4, which way? Left and right. So I want you to do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here's the difference. We're not actually going to plot and label those points right now. We're just going to count, we're going to hash them off. Okay, there you go. Put a dot there so you know where you're at. What does that 4 tell me? Up and down 2. Yes. let's do that. Now yesterday, remember when you connected those, we call them vertices, and you connected them with an oval? Today, we're gonna connect them with a box. Okay? So I want you to draw a rectangle. Through this. So you find those points the same exact way you found them before, but with a hyperbola, you make a box out of those points. And then once you get the box drawn, I want you to draw in the diagonals. So you know what diagonals are. I want you to draw in the diagonals of the rectangle and extend them beyond the rectangle. So make them nice and long, those rectangles, or those diagonals, I mean. What? It would start at the center. Yeah. Now, the center won't always be the origin, but they always emanate out from the center. Okay? Now, we're going to draw our shape. Look at your equation very carefully. Whichever letter comes first, that's the direction that the curve opens. Look at problem B. See how in problem B, y comes first? Okay, that makes a difference. Okay, in hyperbola, that makes a difference. So x comes first. So right here, this dot right here on the axis, draw in from that dot, following your asymptotes on both sides. So the pink thing is your hyperbola. The pink thing is the hyperbola. It's the answer, or is the picture, not the answer, it's the picture. These two dots right here, where you started your curve, where you drew your curve out, those are called the vertices. So for us, there's only two. For us, our vertices would be -4, 0, and 4, 0. In an ellipse, you use all 4 of your points, but not in a hyperbola. Because in a hyperbola, you're only drawing either this part of it or this part of it. So 2 vertices. The center, of course, was the origin. Now, would you agree that this right here, connecting the pink dots, that is 8 long? This is 8 long. And yesterday when it was an ellipse, we called that the major axis. Well, today we're calling it the transverse axis. In a hyperbola, it's called the transverse axis, and it is 8 units long. See this right here? Vertices. Think of vertices. So transverse joins the vertices. And then the other axis, what we used to call the minor axis, is now called the conjugate axis. And it is 4. All right, and you're gonna find one more thing. You're gonna find the equations of the asymptotes. So you know when you drew in those purple lines, they're lines, and we're gonna write the equation for them, okay? The lines, Eli asked this earlier, I don't know if y'all heard it or not. The lines will always go through the center. This center is at the origin. So the point that we're going to use to write our equations is going to be 0, 0 in this problem. Not in every problem, in this problem. Okay? And then we need a slope. We're going to write the equation of a line, we need a slope. Remember when you built the box? How did you build it? What did you do? You started at the center, and what did you do? You counted up, 2, and over 4. So your slope is plus or minus 1/2. Again, when you made this box, you started at the center and you counted up 2 and over 4. That slope is 2/4. If I went the other way, up 2, back 4, that slope would be negative 2/4. The slopes are always the same number, just one's positive and one's negative. So here we go, a little review. This was on your first semester exam. How do we write the equation of a line? What? Well, my answer will end up looking like y equals mx plus b, and you can absolutely, Charles, do it that way if you wish. I am a big fan, the way I've always done it with you is point slope. So y minus y equals m x minus x, remember that?
Yeah.
But you don't have to do it that way. This would end up being y equals 1/2 x. Because of all the zeros in there. And then what would the other one be? Same thing, only the slope is negative 1/2. So it ends up being negative 1/2 x. Those are the equations of the asymptotes. So, the information you're responsible for knowing is find the center, you know how to do that already. Find the vertices, the length of the transverse and conjugate axes, and the equations of the asymptotes. Okay? So we're gonna do it again. Does anybody have a question about that before I erase it? We're not gonna do the focus points of this. We don't have enough time to practice it. All right, let's try the next one. We're not going to do all of these. We're gonna do 2 more. So we have y squared over 9 minus x squared over 16 equals 1. Where is the center? 0, 0 again, yeah. What does that 9 tell me to do? Pay attention to where it is. What does that 9 tell me to do?
Go up and down there.
Up 3, down 3. And what does that 16 tell me to do?
Go right and left.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Do not make an oval. Instead, make a box. And then draw in the diagonal of that box. Which way, every time you get to this point, you have 2 choices. Your hyperbola is either gonna go like this, like that one did, or it could go like this. It could be an up and down, or it could be a left and right. What do you think this one is?
Up and down.
Up and down because y comes first. And in a hyperbola, that's how you know. So I'm gonna put a dot right here and a dot right here. And I'm gonna draw in my hyperbola. Can anybody tell me what those 2 big pink dots are? Those big pink dots are my vertices.
0,
Can anybody tell me what they are?
0, comma
0, 3, and 0, negative 3? Okay, so my vertices are 0, 3, and 0, negative 3, right here, right here. my transverse axis. Now my transverse axis is the one that joins the vertices. This is the transverse. The word transverse means across the vertices. So how long is the transverse axis? 6. The conjugate axis is the other one, which would be this one, and it is how long? 8. We are done except for the asymptotes, okay? So what point will the asymptotes contain? Always the center, which is here, the origin. We're going to do one in a minute that's not at the center. And not at the origin. Now what about slope? What's the slope? I counted up how many and over how many. So my slope is either positive or negative 3/4. Slope is rise over run, up over over. Now write my equations. 1 minus 0 equals 3/4 x minus 0. Now I'm doing these separately because we're going to have to in our next example. With all these zeros, you wouldn't have to do that, but I am because I know I'm going to have to next time. There are the equations and my asymptotes.
And that's right, every equation for all your asymptotes?
You have to write the equations and the asymptotes, right? Yes, so the things you're going to write down, Jarius, for the hyperbola are the center, the vertices, transverse and conjugate axis, and the equation of the asymptotes. And you don't have to remember that. It'll be listed on your test. But those are the things I will put on there. All right, now we gotta get one more done. So I gotta hand out some stuff. So I started erasing. Any question about that? All right, turn to letter E. We're gonna do letter E. Letter E. Okay. What do you notice? The center is not the origin. The center is 1, -1. Really, really important point. 1, -1. Now let's build our box. All right, so how do we build our box? We're going to count up 3, so 1, 2, 3. Down 3, 1, 2, 3. And sideways 2. So 1, 2. 1, 2. And there's my box. Does anybody have a question about that? All right, what's the next step? Put in my diagonals, so they're called my asymptotes, but they're the diagonals of the box. So here I go, I'm extending them on. There we go. Now I gotta draw in my curve. Remember, with a hyperbola, you can draw them left and right, or you can draw them, I can't do this, up and down, right? So which one is this one? Left and right. So remember these orange points when you built the box? This one right here and this one right here are going to be your vertices. because that's the way the hyperbola is going to open. And we know that because that letter comes first. Now, you need to label, or you need to figure out what are those 2 points. So look at your graph, you have graph paper. What are the coordinates of this purple point right here? Negative 1, negative 1. And this one is,
3
watch
negative.
it. This one's 1, negative 1. You count it over. This is 3, negative 1. Use your grid to help you figure that out. Now I need to write the equation of my asymptotes. So I need a point and I need a slope. What point am I going to use? Always, always, I'm going to use my, well, not my, I'm using my center, which could be the origin, but it isn't this time. The center is 1, negative 1. That's my point. And then my slope, just remember how you built the box. How many up did you count? 3. How many over did you count? 2. So your slope is either positive or negative 3 halves, depending whether you went right or left. The slopes are always the same number. One's positive, one's negative. All right, so here we go. Y minus my y, remember this is x and y minus my y equals 3 halves, x minus my x, and y minus my y equals negative 3 halves, x minus my x. And to make it easy for you, you can leave it just like that. You can leave it in the point slope form. Okay? All right, I'm gonna hand some papers out. If you do number G, would you work on number G while I'm doing that? One word of caution about G. Where is the center? Watch it. Negative 1, comma 2. Y, look at equation G, you guys. Y is the center, negative 1, comma 2. Because x comes first. When you write a point, x comes first. So go ahead and put your center on there and see. We're right back here.
What's a pro well? You got it?
If you are happy with what you say right now, you need to score that amount on this test. If you want to improve your quarter grade, you are going to need to do better. So if your quarter grade is a 75 and you don't like that, you need to score better than a 75 on this. Okay? Where did you put your center? We already talked about this, I hope you did. Where'd you put it?
Negative 1, 2.
Negative 1, 2, we talked about it. Come on, you got it. So, you have the center at negative 1, 2. And then you should have counted up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And right and left, 1, 2, 1, 2. So your box should be kind of tall and skinny like this. That's what your box looks like.
Yep.
And you drew in your asymptotes. And making a nice little X. And which way did you open your hyperbola? Up and down. Were you able to figure out these two big black points? Those are your vertices. Of those two big black points. What are the coordinates? Negative 1, negative 3. And negative 1, 7.
Yep.
This is your transverse axis. How long is it? Your transverse is 10, and your conjugate is 4. What is the slope of your asymptotes? The slope of your asymptotes is 5 halves.
Yep.
Plus or minus. And the point you're going to use when you write your equation is negative 1, 2. I am not assigning 8.3, but if you do it, I'll be a bonus. On Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I don't need gumbo.
She'll be down there. She'll be down there tripping out.
Wait, is corn?
After this.
After. Like, I can do
Yes.
I'm Florida man.
That's our boy. I'm going to Nova.
I'm in Florida man. I'm in
What are you
Florida.
talking about, business? Oh, I don't know. Whenever I finish getting my hair done.
What?
They didn't say a house.
Oh, I didn't drop the cone.